it is 2 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order. So just for the record, this is a special meeting with the City Council and Harbor District Liason Standing Committee. So I'm going to ask our City Clerk, Krista Martinelli, for a roll call, please.
President Mateusz.
Here.
Commissioner Chang Corelli.
Present.
Vice Mayor Normandy.
Present.
Councilmember Audio.
Present.
Perfect. So there are 2 speaker cards. I'm going to call up William. Help me with your last name, please. Thank you. You want to come up and sit right there?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name's William Kinnebrew, and in June of 2017, my partner and I, Isaac Crawford, started Fathom Marine to continue the services that Drake Marine had previously provided. Together we have over 30 years of combined experience in the marine maintenance and repair industry. Some of our certifications include Yamaha outboards. Isaac Crawford is the only certified technician for Yamaha on the peninsula. Volvo Penta, Scania, Mercury, Mercruiser, and Yanmar. Due to the changes at Oyster Point Marina, Drake Marine stopped operations in May of 2017. Drake Marine had been providing repair services to the Oyster Point Marina and its boaters for over 10 years. Some of the customers include the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department, the South San Francisco Fire Department, Redwood City Fire Department, the San Mateo County Harbor District, Vessel Assist, the U.S. Coast Guard and Navy, the America's Cup team, and countless recreational boaters. Marine maintenance and repair services are essential to the boaters of San Francisco Bay and the peninsula. The services provided at Oyster Point Marina are the only services provided on the peninsula and in San Francisco. In addition to the essential maintenance services, Oyster Point Marina is one of only 2 full-service fuel docks on the peninsula that provide both gas and diesel fuel. Oyster Point Marina also provides services to dispose of hazardous materials related to maintenance and services such as fuel filters, oil filters, and antifreeze. If these marine services are removed from the marina where they belong, the cities in the surrounding area will have boaters in violation of many city municipal codes performing maintenance and services on their boats in the streets in the front of their homes. Fathom Marine's goal is to partner with the San Mateo County Harbor District and the City of South San Francisco to continue to provide marine services at competitive prices while providing first-class customer service. We are currently working on a business plan to provide to the Harbor District, which will encompass management of the fuel dock and maintaining access to the services that will help Oyster Point Marina to continue to grow and flourish.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, William. I'm going to defer the second speaker card to President Mateusz.
Sabrina Brennan, we have a 3-minute limit, and I don't know who's timing our speakers.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I presume you're speaking as a member of the public and not a member of the Harbor District. Otherwise, I'm going to have to say that your comments.
I'm Sabrina Brennan, and I'm speaking as a member of the public. Thanks for the opportunity to address this committee. I just wanted to mention that it's been requested that these committee meetings be noticed and agendized as special meetings of the City Council and of the Harbor Commission. And that request was made specifically so that the full Board of Harbor Commissioners and the full City Council would be able, if they wished, to attend these meetings and ask questions and learn from the experts that come here and the attorneys and the managers and so forth. These are complex issues, and they impact the Harbor District significantly. We are a small district. So I think it's valuable to notice these meetings so that all the Harbor Commissioners and City Council members, if they wish, are able to attend and participate and ask questions. So I would just ask that this committee consider that going forward. Thank you for your time.
I'd like to state for the record that as we have 3 commissioners here, we will not be welcoming any more comments from Sabrina Brennan.
You cannot block me from making public.
I have a quick
Sabrina Brennan, I'd like to get back on the record, and you cannot block
Sabrina.
me from making public comment
Got
as a member
5-minute
of the
recess
public.
right now.
You cannot block me from making public comment
Go.
as a member of the public.
5-minute recess. Back to order, if you don't mind. We have another speaker card.
So in reference to, I'm going to call up Catherine Slater Carter in reference to background on the proposal.
Thank you. Catherine Slater Carter. I somewhat follow things at the Harbor District and have not noticed that this has been a point of discussion for the Harbor District. So I'm curious and would appreciate when you get to this agenda item, the background on how these documents got so far along without having gotten comments from the Harbor District Board itself. So, and perhaps you could throw in whether South City has been discussing this all along, or whether it's somewhat drafted without South City's input too. Thank you.
Great. Christy, is there any more public comment cards?
I don't have any. I turned in a public comment card for both public comment and also for, I don't have the agenda in front of me, but the agenda item related to item 2.
So I have item number 2 that you already spoke on, Mrs. Brennan, so I'm going to.
I did not speak to 2, I spoke to public comment.
So unfortunately, due to the study session, and there's 3 commissioners, I will not be hearing you on item number 2.
You will not be hearing public comment. This is, for the record, this is Sabrina Brennan speaking. And I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying that there'll be no public comment on item
We're
2?
closing public comment to you because
I
there's
put in
Brown Act
I put in a
violation.
speaker slip on item 2, and I'd like to speak as a member of the public on item 2. It's within the law for me to speak on item
It's not
2.
within the
Through the
law.
chair.
It is within the
Through
law
the
to speak
chair.
as a member of the public on item 2.
Liza and Tom, can I ask a quick question? I thought for special meetings, we were only obligated to have 1 open public comment, and that's it. Is that correct?
I'm going to defer this to our attorney.
So the agenda includes a public comment section for the items on the agenda. And as long as the speakers are allowed the 3 minutes, the public comment opportunity has been provided. If speakers want to provide any further, they can provide them in writing to the commission.
So we could technically close public
To
comment?
be clear, I'm advising the
Oh, I'm
council on
sorry.
that.
Okay.
So the council, the liaison committee has already entertained the public comments, so you do not need to entertain further public comments on the items.
Okay.
So just
Thank
to
you.
be clear, I have a question for council.
Okay.
I was able to
This is
comment
this
during
is
public
the
comment,
study session,
but I
so
was
can
not
we get
able
on
to
to item
comment on
number
item
2?
2. I want to make sure it's on the record that I am being blocked from commenting on item 2. I have a prepared comment that I would like to read. It's under 3 minutes. I'd like to make it on item 2. I would appreciate not being blocked from commenting on item 2 as a member of the public.
Anything you say and do here is a Brown Act violation because you're a member of the San Mateo County Harbor District, and you are further digging yourself a hole by speaking at this after being
If you
warned not
believe,
to.
if you
Okay,
believe
so
that to
through
be
the chair,
true,
can
let
we
me
get
dig
to
my own
item
hole.
number 1,
but
and
I'd
then
like to
deal
make
with
a
the
public
approval
comment
of
on
the
item 2.
amendments From
So
the last
Sabrina-
meeting.
Or Commissioner Brennan, I'm going to close public comments
Thank you.
as in your position. So this is not a violation of Brown Act, so we can continue the study session and ensure that we have some kind of.
You have not gotten to item 2 yet. I would like to
We haven't
comment
gotten
on
to
item
We
2.
haven't-
1. Can we do
Matters
item
of
1,
consideration to
please?
have item number 1. Krista, please.
Motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of April 17th, 2017.
I'd like to recommend that the minutes not be approved. There are far too many spelling errors. There's syntax errors. There's a number of things that I'd like reviewed and corrected prior to our approving the minutes.
I concur with President Machuch. I don't always read my minutes. I'm so happy that I did this time. I had attempted to correct an error at the previous meeting, the description of a valve and the proper terminology for the valve on page 6, and it doesn't, the correction doesn't appear as I intended. Moving deeper into the minutes, there was, I know sometimes I'm a little incoherent, but I can't believe I'm this bad. So the transcript is okay, so it seems to be make art even more necessary.
Yeah.
I don't think that's me. And then Commissioner Matucci is much better spoken, and his was, there's a number of docks that were operated by Drake Marine or used by them, and their condition has not got much.
Well, so I actually, there were actual, I looked at the, I read the minutes a couple times, and there were comments attributed to the wrong
Yes.
member of the committee. So I just want to make sure that all of those things are corrected and proofread again. So I'm with Councilmember Adiego and President Matoush. So you're suggesting maybe approve this at the next meeting?
With corrections.
Yeah, with corrections, okay.
Is that enough? We don't need
That's
to.
fine. You don't need to take action.
Okay, great. Item number 2, Krista. Thank you.
Implementation agreement between the Harbor District and the City of South San Francisco related to the 2011 MOU approved by the Harbor District, City of South San Francisco, and South San Francisco Redevelopment Agency.
I have a report that I believe Steve would like to open.
I'd like to thank the council members, the commissioners, and South City staff. This has been a topic of conversation, the relationship between South City and the district. We started off at the Board of Commissioners talking about the JPA in February of this year. In March of this year, the Oyster Point Committee had a meeting talking about the JPA and specifically also Drake Marine, both boat storage and the fuel dock. In April of this year, this committee also met again and identified the need for this implementation agreement and had some significant discussion at that time as well about the fuel dock. So I'd like to just recognize the effort that has gone in so far into getting us to this point. I think that the agreement itself is a simple agreement to facilitate the completion of the
Mr. Graff,
activities.
I'm going to pause really quick. Commissioner Brennan, if I can excuse you from this table and have you sit in the audience.
I'm
So
waiting to make comment on item 2.
I'm not opening comments from item number 2.
I'm just gonna wait till you make comment
Then
on
I'm
item 2.
going to call a 5-minute recess because these disruptions is not able
I'm not
to conduct
disrupting the
bus-
meeting, you are.
Then I'm asking you to remove yourself from the table so we can go through the staff reports.
I'm sitting
and the
at the public
presentation.
comment position, waiting for my public comment. I'm not interrupting the meeting, you are.
Through the chair,
I'm listening to the staff report.
through the
This
chair.
is not a special meeting.
So
Commissioner
really
Brown.
quickly, the optics of this looks like there are 3 commissioners at this table, which would be a violation of the Brown Act since the public comment period has been closed. So I can put, if you'd like to have a 5-minute recess, we can do that. It's up to the chairs.
I'm going to call a 5-minute recess. This is like absurd.
Service. SSF.com.
Stephen Graff, you may continue.
Thank you. To briefly recap, I want to thank the council members and the commissioners for this meeting today. From the district side, we have talked about our relationship with South City, not just in 2016 and before, but in February of this year, again in March of this year, where we started talking about the fuel, and in April of this year with this committee, the Liaison Committee, where we talked about a draft, developing an implementation agreement and specifically focusing in on fuel as an issue that needed to be addressed. As it says in the staff report, this implementation agreement is simply intended to assist the city and the Harbor District in implementing the 2011 MOU and the proposed Oyster Point development, including 1C and 2C infrastructure work. Certainly, your staff will receive input today and bring this back to the respective bodies. I know that City Manager Futrell has prepared a little PowerPoint, and I'll turn it over to him to show the PowerPoint, answer questions, and be prepared for any detailed discussion that the committee so desires.
Great, thank you, Mr. McGrath. Dr. Trump.
Thank you, and thank you, Steve. I will, before I start, reiterate, it has been seems a lot longer than 3 months that we've been working on this, and at times been contentious, but I think we've reached a place where both staffs are ready to recommend this agreement to first this body and then later the full commission, full city council, which clarifies our earlier 2001 agreement, which was passed by the city council at that time.
2011 agreement.
What did I say?
2001, 2011.
2011 agreement,
MOU.
which was passed at that time by the Harbor District Commissioners and by the City Council. So I do have a presentation, the beginning of which I'm trying to put this, what we're doing in some context, and to Catherine Slater-Carter's comment earlier of trying to understand how this fits in the big picture of what we're doing. I do think it's worth our time to spend just a few minutes revisiting that before we again go into a deep dive on the nitty-gritty of this particular detail. So, South San Francisco is the world's largest biotech cluster. 215 biotechnology companies east of 101, now coming into west of 101. Four of the five largest pharmaceuticals in the world are in South San Francisco. Approximately 34% of these companies are doing cancer research, a growing number are doing aging research, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. We have 2 Google-backed companies in town also doing life science work. This is a map of the entire Oyster Point area. Everything in color is biotechnology as it stands today. So you can see in context, this is the marina and the area currently controlled by the Harbor District under the JPA from 1977. Didn't look like this in 1977, but this map is continuing to turn colors as old warehouses are being torn down and turned into cutting-edge biotechnology. As Mountain View and Sunnyvale may be considered the heart of Silicon Valley, South San Francisco is the heart of biotechnology in the world and the largest cluster. I want to take a minute and just watch something. This was put on by the Cove. You've seen this under construction off 101. But it's worth putting it in context of what we're trying to accomplish. Just up the street from the Oyster Point Marina. Driving north on 101, you'll see this campus under construction. Building 7, the biotech building plus, Marriott Hotel. The first two buildings are finished and occupied, the research ongoing. Buildings 3 and 4 will be finished in a couple of months and are fully leased to biotech companies. Buildings 5 and 6 are under construction, and I understand they're already pre-leased, even though they're not complete. Building 7 will likely start next year. The Marriott Hotel opens in less than 30 days. This is the world that Oyster Point Marina lives in, and that Oyster Point Development that we'll be talking about will become a part of. If you look at Oyster Point Development and what is the vision for this, it is a $2 billion remake of the waterfront in South San Francisco. Their current proposal, 1.1 million square feet of biotech labs combined with 1,200 residential units, which would be nestled around the lower marina, 30,000 square feet of retail, $2 billion private investment into the waterfront. This would be the new entryway after they tear down the hotel and the eatery out there, providing a main boulevard with views of the bay, new road infrastructure, new bay trail, sea level rise protection, new landfill cap, new parks, remodel and reopen the public beach, and provide outdoor event space. This would be the view coming from the ferry, and this would be in the right, the marina operated by the Harbor District. As you go a little further along, there'll be outdoor cafes and restaurants. These are the plans that were turned into BCDC last month, Marion, on how they plan to reshape and remake the Bay Trail and all of the infrastructure out there in an environmentally sustainable way, a tremendous leap forward in quality of what's currently there. Again, this is still the BCDC presentation, the marina area improvements, marina lawn area, and you can see on the left again, the marina operated by the Harbor District. Greatly improved public beach. There is a public beach that most people have forgotten about because it's fallen into terrible disrepair. Completely reshaping this and making it an active beach again. Coastal Meadow, this was something BCDC was particularly excited about to maintain that ecosystem along the Bay Trail. Waterfront lounge areas, so people can enjoy that San Francisco Bay. And again, this is their vision of where they're going out there. The city is very supportive, as are our residents, and it's time that our beachfront coastal area was improved. This all started in 2011 with a company named Shorenstein. The city and Shorenstein negotiated for several years. The Harbor District was part of those negotiations. The MOU that was mentioned was actually passed in 2009, followed by another agreement with the Harbor District in 2011, which is the one we're dealing with today. For reference, the area in red is what was owned by Shorenstein, is now owned by OPD. The area in blue is the area controlled by the Harbor District under the JPA. The yellow are what's referred to as the King leases. Many, many years ago, the Harbor District leased those properties, I assume to someone named Mr. King, who turned it over to many people. Shorenstein, with this deal, bought the King leases, and it's under those leases that Drake's Marine operated as well as the small hotel. As part of 2011, there were a series of agreements, 3. The city of South San Francisco entered into an agreement with Shorenstein, Oyster Point Ventures, as a DA and a DDA, a development agreement and a disposition and development agreement. The city and the Harbor District also entered into an agreement in 2011, the purpose of which was to really try to look into the future and forecast what type problems would arise, how would, once construction started here, how would these two entities work together to make this successful. Now we are on the cusp of construction. And as we are working through this 2011 agreement with the Harbor District, now actually looking at real drawings, real numbers, we have found there are some vague elements here some things that could be tightened up, and that was the genesis of the implementation agreement. To tighten up this agreement so that this $2 billion development could move forward and achieve that vision. The 2011 agreement, first it references the DA and DDA, it ties the two together. It removes land from the JPA, and that should happen September 29th of this year. That's the trigger date when certain parcels will come out of the JPA and be conveyed legally to OPV. They will own the land at that point. The city pays the Harbor District $2 million under this deal, and the city has paid this. And it's important to remember that as part of this 2011 agreement and Oyster Point Development Oyster Point Development, the Harbor District has received $2 million cash for this. There's a provision the city will provide under certain circumstances office space to the Harbor District. And the Harbor District in the agreement retains 40,000 square feet on the waterfront or near it for future lease. And as we all appreciated, it would be a ferry village perhaps, but the opportunity to develop and then earn revenue from future leases out there in this 40,000 square foot. It did claim it had exhibits B and D, which detailed the site of the ferry village, as well as a city-sponsored hotel and recreation space. There we go. 2011 exhibits, just for reference, do show the space for the ferry village here, future hotel, and recreational playfields by operation by the city. This is also on a big board for future reference, but this is the current drawing from 2017 with a lot more detail of what is going to be built out there. Again, it shows the hotel space and the open space, but also shows the rebuilt parking areas, new public and private restrooms. The private restrooms would be for the use of the liveaboards and other visitors to the marina through the Harbor District, as well as the Bay Trail and the new boulevards, so a new way to get to Oyster Point. The road that you currently use around the bottom will be will go away, and they'll have new tree-lined boulevards along with the parks. That was a bit look ahead. So 2016, Oyster Point Ventures changed to Oyster Point Development. Oyster Point Ventures, which was backed by the Shorenstein Company, sold its interest to Oyster Point Development, which many people call Greenland. Greenland USA is the largest investor. There are actually 4 investors in the project, and the technical name for it is Oyster Point Development. In June of 2016, the City Council approved the transfer from OPV to OPD, and that same month, the Harbor District approved the transfer of what we call the King Leases from OPD to OPV. Since that time, since August of 2016, Oyster Point Development has hired contractors, designers, landscape architects, and they are on the cusp of beginning construction to make this real. The 2017 implementation agreement we are here today to discuss, again, is meant to massage around the earlier 2011 agreement where there may be some vague terms and things that need to be cleaned up. And it does principally 4 things. Makes clear that Oyster Point Development has site access to make the improvements, that they actually can go onto the site legally and begin construction. Makes clear that the King leases are terminated. They own the King leases, and they will be building buildings in biotech. So those leases are terminated. And makes clear that the hotel and recreation sites, which we saw earlier, are removed from the JPA entirely, and the city is pursuing those 2 as was the intent. And a new feature provides for a new fuel dock and fuel line system for the Harbor District. That merits a little further discussion. Over the past 3 months, Harbor District staff has been, I would say, enthusiastically pursuing an opportunity to rebuild and fix the fuel line out at Oyster Point Development. Harbor District staff has made a very compelling case that a fuel line is an essential element of a successful marina, and we have included it in this implementation agreement. So what it will do, and this is the best map we had. It does show the fuel line in red. There are underground tanks. So first, if by reference, this is the roundabout out there. The yacht club would be here if I'm not in the way. Over here, there are underground fuel tanks that must be removed by 2025 by state law. There is a fuel line that runs underground, and then once it hits the pier area, I think it goes above ground and runs out to a fuel dock here. So what this agreement does, once passed by both bodies, is first provides $90,000 for immediate repairs. That the city of South San Francisco will provide that money to the Harbor District for immediate repairs. There is an estimate that was provided that shows it's $69,000, but what's envisioned, and again, this is really the harbor folks' bailiwick, is what do we need to do to keep it in operation and make it safe until we replace it. No one wants to spend money on parts of the fuel line which a year later we may rip out to bring in a new fuel line. But there is a general recognition that something needs to be done immediately. How do we pay for it? The city will step up and do that as part of this agreement. Number two, the replacement is funded actually by OPV through a community facilities district, which they have agreed to. They will pay a certain amount per square foot of the buildings that they build, and that money is dedicated towards replacement of the fuel system in its entirety at Oyster Point Marina. It is a $2.5 million investment that again inures to the benefit of the Harbor District and the boat users out there. We do have a language in the agreement because there are at least 2 lawyers in the room licensed to practice in California, and we have to envision what happens if the community facilities district does not occur. Forming a community facilities district in California is a lengthy process. We believe it will go to the City Council October 11th for its first look, and then there's a public process, and depending on how that goes, we will either get that finished in December or at the latest April. But we will certainly not have the CFD completely finished by the time there's groundbreaking on October 12th, which is our goal. So if for whatever reason the CFD does not come to pass, it envisions that, of course, the Harbor District could continue to operate the system and could replace it at its own expense if it chose to do so. However, if the Harbor District decides we do not want to operate the fuel system, or we do not want to invest the money in that, then the city is willing to step into the shoes of the Harbor District, and the city will, at its expense, pay to decommission the fuel system, which really means remove it. Those underground tanks must come out by 2025 regardless, and the city will take on that obligation as the landowner under this particular agreement. So I will say, editorial comment from the city side, it's our belief this is a really, Steve McGraw and his team have done a very good job of negotiating with the city to get first $90,000 from a third source, and then find a way to fund $2.5 million in dock and fuel improvements without it costing the Harbor District anything, and then as a fail-safe, the city will step in and decommission at its expense the fuel system. So, but we are not going to let a fuel system stand in the way of a $2 billion reconstruction of our waterfront. And city staff is recommending to council that we agree to these terms. The benefits of the implementation agreement for the Harbor District, it makes clear the 2011 agreement. We don't want disputes or nagging vague questions about how it's supposed to work when OPD is ready to start construction. It does fund the $90,000 in the fuel dock. It does shrink the footprint that the Harbor District is responsible for at Oyster Point on the land side by removing the hotel site and the recreational area from the responsibility of the Harbor District. You no longer have to worry about O&M on those sites. And it does build new infrastructure supporting the marina, which you saw earlier. Much of that infrastructure, well, I'd say all of that infrastructure is old and will be replaced in total. And I hope that does translate to a reduction in the maintenance cost for the Harbor District, for the new bathrooms, the new bay trail, the new parking lots, et cetera. From the city, makes clear the 2011 agreement, and most importantly, clears the way for a transformative waterfront redevelopment. So that's what we're really here, the staff is presenting to the committee today, our draft of that implementation agreement, which resolves issues that we have uncovered as staff and opens the way for Oyster Point Development to begin construction. Look at next steps. We are here at the top at the Liaison Committee. Assuming we're successful today or get enough direction to move forward, I will recommend to the mayor that we present this at the September 6th full city council meeting. It's my understanding that if things go well and we get it going, that there may be a recommendation to hear this on the September 20th full Harbor District meeting. And that is all in time for just 2.5 weeks later, the actual groundbreaking out at the site. So that is staff report, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, so thank you to our city manager, Mike Petrell, and our general manager, Steve McGrath. I'm going to open this up to the liaison committee for any questions for either of the two representatives.
I have a question.
Commissioner?
So, this is a great PowerPoint presentation, Mike, and y'all have done a lot of work, and I appreciate that. My question is actually probably more fundamental than anything. I mean, looking at, and all I had was the electronic copy of the staff report and the attachments and the maps. And it's great that, you know, yeah, we've done things financially to make things get this far, but I didn't see any, I still didn't see, you know, projections on what is the Harbor District going to, I'm not trying to make this sound as diplomatic as I possibly can, but based on the minutes from the last meeting, it sounds like OPD, which is now OPV, right?
Other way around.
OPV is now OPD. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. My impression was they were going to actually be more involved with financing and developing this fuel dock thing as the lessee. So that's one thing. Where has that conversation, in my opinion, it seemed, well, the conversation has seemed to have fallen through the cracks, so I want to kind of know what happened there. To the lessee situation and the sub-lessee, it sounds like there's been an assignment of the sub-lease. I don't know, based on today's public comment, and I'm not saying that's good or bad, but we had we had an OPM, or Oyster Point Marina, committee meeting, Tom and I, and Steve, on July 24th. And it sounds like, is it Fathom? They were already operating in June of 2017. So, I don't know if that's the case. So I don't even know what's going on there, because nothing was discussed at our July 24th meeting at the Harbor District's office. So, and it seems like financially things are changing. And so while I understand that there's a public benefit for the city of South San Francisco, I'm trying to look at what the public benefit would be for the Harbor District and the rest of San Mateo County taxpayers. Now, that's not to say I'm against this, I just don't have the answer. So I want to kind of understand what happened between the last meeting and today, because clearly the sublease has also been assigned to a new sublessee, which we didn't know about until today.
Mike, yeah, you take the first one and I'll take the second one. Second part.
Depends what you say is the first or the second, but go ahead.
Go ahead. The funding for the fuel dock and OPD, and then I'll address the lease issue.
Okay. On the funding side, LPD says we will provide you the money, but we really don't have an interest in designing or building a fuel dock.
Well, who suggested the CFD?
The CFD came from the city side.
Right.
Because
It was more than for the fuel line, the concept of a CFD.
That is correct. The total package of the CFD goes beyond the fuel line. And what has been agreed upon is there would be a continuing, it would not include the money from the fuel line, but there would be a continuing CFD for the benefit of the city to pay for continued maintenance of all of the nice amenities that were just shown, such as the public beach and the recreational areas. So there, the CFD has a bigger component. When the fuel issue came up, then the issue became, well, it was acceptable to OPV to increase the size of the CFD to accommodate the fuel system, which was not an easy negotiation.
Okay.
To get them to agree that yes, they will pay for the entire system, even though they are currently only the holders of the lease, and a lease which, under most circumstances, will end in about 30 days. But they are willing to do that. I believe it's more acceptable to, but I'll let Steve speak, the Harbor District and certainly to the city, that OPD back out and not have its fingers in trying to tell us what kind of fuel system to build. They are not marina operators, but they were willing to fund it. So I'm not sure if that's dramatically different than the last meeting. Maybe
Well,
at
the
that time.
CFD wasn't even discussed in the last meeting, and so the only reason I'm not worried about it, I mean, as you know, I sit on a fire board in Menlo Park, and we have also discussed a communities facilities district for different reasons, and I can understand the reasons there. And now that you've explained that there's actually an area that's bigger than, which I kind of knew, I didn't know how big this community facilities district would be. So it sounds like you have, because I think if I remember correctly from our legal counsel there, you do need to have an initial like taxing partner, which sounds like OPD is. Is that correct?
There are 3 landowners involved.
Okay.
The city, OPD, and a company named Kishiwa.
Okay.
It requires 2/3 vote of the 3 landowners based on square footage of land to pass the CFD.
Right.
By our calculations, the city and OPD alone exceeds 80%, although we are working with Kishiwa. So we're very confident that the CFD will make its way through the city council. But there are mandated delays and times, and it's not a fast
Right.
process.
At all.
No, but since there's only 3 parties, and 2 of the parties have already said yes, I think we will succeed.
Okay, and that is the April 2018 deadline? Tell me how that fits in.
That is
because
correct.
So do you intend to have this thing created by that time? Because in the report, in the report, the way I read it is that the consideration should have been done by that time. Not that the process would be done by that time, where there would be a full-fledged CFD.
It's our intention that a full-fledged CFD will be formed no later than April of 2018.
Okay.
And that's the scenarios built by our CFD consultants as well as attorneys. We hope and believe it will be earlier, but no later than April 2018.
Okay, and then, in the public comment that we heard from Fathom, and it was an issue that I brought up last time about the fuel dock having, an impact one way or the other. It sounds like there are lots of different entities that could be impacted. And so with this growth and development happening, and I'm not saying it's bad or good, I'm just saying, if there's going to be this pretty quick growth, and, I think all over the county we're experiencing that. We certainly are down in my neck of the woods. What kind of impact do you think now, especially based on the public comment, will there be on a fuel dock the fuel dock the area, I guess? Because if all of these law enforcement agencies are using this, and I brought this up last time, it's, I was told last time there would be no negative impact, and now it sounds like there could be a negative impact. And that's all in the minutes from the last meeting. So just help me understand if there's been a change in no negative impact to a negative impact or more negative impact, and if there's more negative impact, what that negative impact is.
Okay, so I'll
Does
take
that
this,
make
thank you.
sense at all?
And,
I'm sorry.
yeah, and your first part of your comments was regarding the lease. We have a lease with Oyster Point Development, and Drake Marine is a sub-lessee of theirs. And we know that fuel has been continuing to be supplied. We have talked amongst internally about having backup by training our staff with the necessary training in order to be fuel dispensers, marine fuel dispensers. The part of your question that related to public safety, we do recognize that fuel is important at a marina, and that's why the negotiations have been so extensive with South City. We believe that there's a high likelihood that the CFD will be formed, the money will be present, and the fuel system will be improved. If that does not happen, then there will be a policy decision for the commission as to whether or not to take on that responsibility or to walk away from fuel, and at which point the city has said, at this point, that they would be responsible for decommissioning the system.
Right, so that begs the question, then that would be even more of a problem if there's reliance on the fuel docks, right? Or the fuel
Yeah.
dock.
There is fuel.
So
we do
why
have-
even do it then?
Why even do what, Commissioner?
The fuel dock, I mean, because it's, and maybe I'm looking at it in too simplistic of a way, but, right now, what I'm hearing, and help me understand if I'm misinterpreting this, is that we would basically, the Harbor District, we would be responsible for the fuel dock. And, if the CFD is formed, obviously the funding, some of that would come from there. If the CFD isn't formed, and I know it's a long process because my fire district has been discussing this since January of 2017, maybe even before then. If it doesn't happen, then the choice would be the Harbor District can continue to do something based on what you're telling me, or the city can decommission. If this Harbor District decides not to do anything and continue with the fuel dock and it's decommissioned by the city, why even have it in the first place?
Again, the district believes it's an important component of the marina.
Well, that's,
Right.
based
So-
on what y'all have said,
Yeah,
it is, so,
right. So
but if
we-
it can be decommissioned that
so we-
easily, is
Well,
that an
it-
essential
well,
service that's gonna be
let's-
given up?
Let's back away from that easily. We've got fundamentally three different parts of the process of maintaining the fuel facility. The first are the initial and immediate repairs that were identified in City Manager Futrell's presentation, that the city will fund to the tune of $90,000. We've seen the condition of the fuel dock. We can move forward and make it safe while the CFD is being formed, while we're developing plans, specs, engineering for the replacement of that fuel dock. Then we've got a bright line between what we're calling initial improvements, I guess, which is from the shore out to the fuel dispenser. And then the second part is from that point back to the fuel tank. We do have a hard deadline on the fuel tank, as City Manager Futrell mentioned, 2025. By 2025, the fuel tank must either be removed completely and the surrounding area mitigated, or replaced by a dual wall tank with dual wall lines connecting it to the dispensing system. So we've got two separate
And who
components.
pays for that,
At this point, the CFD will pay for that,
assuming there is one?
assuming there is one. And as Mr. Futrell mentioned, 2/3 vote of the property owners within a CFD is required to make that happen. And currently, OPD in the city controls 80% of the area. So,
So you have three organizations, if you will, so are those the only taxpayers that would be affected, or do you have to go to
Correct.
residential areas too?
There's no
like-
residential and
Okay.
only through taxpayers.
and two, control more than sufficient votes to form the district. The language that is included in the implementation agreement that addresses the potential for the lack of formation of the CFD is there because it behooves us to at least address that potentiality, but.
Yeah, I would say that's a big thing, if there's more demand for the use of the fuel dock.
Right, and so that's why I believe that the city has worked hard with OPD to ensure that the funding is there and that the CFD is sized in such a way to ensure a majority of the votes necessary to form it.
So I understand that. I'm just trying to wrap my hands around this a little better so that I can financially figure this out. So in some ways, the city of South San Francisco is the lead agency on this kind of negotiation, right? With OPD and dealing with the development of Oyster Point. And so the special district, which is what we are, you're kind of representing us in terms of your negotiations with Oyster Point development, right?
It remains my personal opinion that that was all done and signed and sealed and delivered in 2011.
Right, but
And
we're dealing with the fuel
there-
dock issue now
There
too.
are many on my side who believe the 2011
That was,
agreement
okay.
is sufficient to do everything we need to do. And you're right, the fuel line is not in there.
Right.
And I find it very hard to connect the fuel line to Oyster Point development and what we're doing. The fuel line has been under the constant control, maintenance, operation of the Harbor District since 1977. All monies made on the fuel line have inured to the benefit of the Harbor District. I have a very hard time explaining to my council why we care at all about the fuel line.
No, I
And why should the city
understand.
contribute anything to a money-making enterprise which the Harbor District has controlled for the last 40 years? But in the interest of not throwing a wrench into a $2 billion waterfront development, we are willing to listen and bend and at least recommend to council that we play and try to make the Harbor District satisfied vis-a-vis the fuel line.
No, I understand, and don't get me wrong, I appreciate that. My thing was at the last meeting, I thought there would be more involvement by the lessee, since this is under their control essentially, of their funding the repair of this, and it sounds like that is not gonna happen, which is why you are now resorting to a CFD, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's usually not it's almost like sometimes it's the last resort, because they're already paying property taxes, these taxpayers.
I respectfully disagree.
Okay,
But for what Oyster Point Development is doing is raising their rental rates on their future tenants.
okay.
And instead of keeping that money themselves, they're going to buy a fuel line with it. So they are, in fact, out of their own pocket, contributing $2.5 million from their bottom line towards this. Again, they have the same trouble I do. They, in total, will be the holders of this lease for about 12 months. How does that make me responsible for $2.5 million worth of replacement? Certainly the argument could be made that as the holders of the lease, they have some obligation to maintain and repair. That is far shy of digging up the tanks and replacing them. So I would say that Oyster Point Development, also in the spirit of wanting to move forward, not delaying the groundbreaking, has capitulated and said, okay, we will fund the $2.5 million. Can we please just move on?
And they
Again,
view that as their contribution of the public to the public benefit side, is that right?
it is not phrased as that, but they certainly could call it that because there's no direct benefit to them.
No,
if
that's why it's
there's-
called a public benefit.
But the term public benefits is a term of art used in land negotiations, so I would not call it that,
Okay,
personally.
okay. So why didn't we know about the reassignment of the sublease at our July 24th meeting?
The July 24th meeting was held to discuss the scope only of the district's Oyster Point committee. And as far as we're concerned, we still have a lease with OPD, and OPD has a sublease with Drake Marine. And if Drake Marine has worked an arrangement with another entity, then that has happened.
So you're saying there is no assignment of the sublease? Okay.
There is no assignment of the lease to which we are a party.
No, the sublease, because that's what, that they're not the party for the lease necessarily, they're the sublessee.
Right.
So basically, there's no assignment for the sublease.
That would be our agreement.
Can I offer some help?
Thank you.
Unless I am wrong, and that there's been some notification that I don't know about, The lease between the Harbor District and its tenant, OPD, requires notice and approval of any subleasing. The district has, for many years now, approved a sublease between OPD and Drake's
Drake,
Marine.
right.
As far as I know, no one has asked the district, OPD has not asked the district permission to assign, or Drake has not asked for permission. We have no knowledge of any assignment of the sublease between OPD and Drake's to some other entity.
Wait, but the Drake's just stopped operations in May of 2017.
Well, I don't know what I heard today, and it may be
Based on public comment today.
based on public comment that I heard. It's not quite as clear as that. I don't know whether these folks are operating it for Drake's Marine or pursuant. I don't know anything about their agreement, but the Harbor District has not approved an assignment of any sublease.
Okay,
I
thank
could
you.
add, on our side, we're confirmed, we're not aware of any assignment of the sublease by OPD, but that's something we should certainly ask them. Under this implementation agreement, if approved, on September 29, when the land transfers take place, all of these leases are canceled. And they
Right,
go
'cause-
away. What that effectively means is that control of the fuel line in that area goes back to the Harbor District as it was originally in the beginning. Then the Harbor District would have the option at that point to negotiate with a future operator and enter into a new lease and earn revenue off that if they choose to do so. That's how this is.
Okay,
So
And
that's
that-
another
thank
conversation.
you.
Internally, that's
Yeah,
either
no,
as
I
a-
know, I just
Yeah.
wanted to ask.
Internally, that's either
I
as
was
a short-term
surprised.
commercial activity permit or an RFP for a longer-term arrangement. But we started having those conversations.
Okay,
And that'll be
Okay.
coming back to the board.
when? Because this was a surprise to me today.
It'll have to be soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Liza and Tom.
Thank you, Commissioner Chinkarelli. President Matooch? Nothing?
So, yeah, Liza, following up on Commissioner Chankrelli, is there any obligation to make the deficiencies of that fuel dock and system, make the current operator, whoever they might be, aware of some of its deficiencies?
The current operator is aware, the current leaseholder is aware. Yes,
We don't know if that's trickled down, but that would be up to them.
Well,
correct.
that's a good question, Mark. Is that the reason that we're going through a CFD process now? Because last time I thought that they were,
We're going through a CFD process.
y'all are going through, that's right,
Yeah.
but it affects what, how this plays into the fuel dock, right? So if they know, if OPD understands the deficiencies, is that why you're resorting to a CFD? I mean, I think one of the things, I don't know with the other parts, what condition things are in or what, I'm just asking. So I don't know.
No, I mean, I'm not in a position to answer that
Okay.
question. I think that I'll challenge you as a commissioner of the Harbor District. You might want to ask the question of how did it get to this point?
No, I'm totally with you on that. So I'm just trying to understand the whole picture.
Anybody else, Councilman?
So I appreciate that City Manager Futrell has found a mechanism to keep OPD at the table and involved in solving this problem that we have all inherited. And I think that the CFD is, if it's acceptable to to OPD, then that's just the natural course. And it's a wonderful outcome. And short of that, if I understand the city manager, short of that, if it wasn't to come to be, we are the provider of funds as last resort to correct that?
And no, if all fails.
I suspect we might be.
The world comes to an end, we have committed to paying for whatever environmentally responsible
Yes.
way to cease operations.
Right.
I believe at the last meeting, I think between myself and President Matooch, we were pretty adamant about the need for a fuel dock out there without further going into the discussion. Before we move on to the staff recommendation, I am aware that Commissioner Brennan has something written. I want to provide you that opportunity to turn in that document to us for the minutes without reading it, so therefore there's not a perception of a violation of the Brown Act. Otherwise, I'd leave that up to you, what would you like to do, but I would like to at least accept your, or you can email it to City Manager Futrell to then turn it into the minutes as well. That I do not see any other blue cards, so I want to at least provide you that option.
So, Code Section 54954 states that every agenda for regular meeting,
This is not a-
and special meetings shall provide an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the legislative body on any item of interest to the public before or during the legislative body's consideration of the item, and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body, provided that no action shall be taken on any item not appearing on the agenda unless the act, and blah, 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 blah. Basically, I have the right, as a member of the public, to make a public comment verbally here, and so does anybody else as a member of the public on item 2. By denying me the right to make my public comment, this committee is violating the law. And so I am asking to make my public comment verbally. I did not intend to disrupt the meeting. My intention is not to be disruptive. I've appreciated everything that I've heard here, and I appreciate everybody's time. But I would like to make my comment, and it is within the law for me to make my public comment on item 2.
Commissioner Brennan, I absolutely understand the law and public comments without a doubt. However, perception and visual is that you're here as a commissioner of the Harbor District. So therefore, I provided an option for you to turn in your written documentation, and or please email it to City Manager Fertrell so we can have it in our records and minutes. However, I'm not going to stop you for wanting to read your minutes or your three minutes of a speech. However, the perception to me, there's 3 commissioners in a meeting, and it could visually look like a violation of Brown Act. Before we go into a recommendation for both the city and the Harbor District. So, I mean, that's all I'm gonna say.
I appreciate your concerns about that, and I can understand where those are coming from. I don't agree because I'm here speaking as a member of the public. I'll just keep it really short, and then I will.
I have a question.
closed public
This
comment.
affects more than just the
One
commissioner who's at the end of the table.
I agree.
There are 2 other commissioners here that have to consider, and I guess their counsel's here. They should get some advice.
Well, we've already asked the commissioner.
Council's here. Why don't we ask our
Actually,
council?
public comment has been closed. So why are we opening up public comment?
How about
again?
just, let's hear from our attorney.
Sure. I have advised my counsel, I've advised you, I've advised my entire council that notwithstanding the Brown Act section that Commissioner Brennan has quoted, that the Attorney General has emphatically opined that when a majority of the board is present at a committee meeting, the member who's not on the committee, such as Commissioner Brennan, may attend the committee hearing, but may do so not as a member of the public with limited rights, more limited than that of any other member of the public, may sit in the room, may not speak in public comment, as Commissioner Brennan is seeking to do, and that to do so would be a violation of the Brown Act pursuant to the Attorney General's published opinion. So that is advice I have given, and I'm giving again here today. It was not my recommendation that Commissioner Brennan, you be permitted to provide a public comment.
Okay, that's
Thank
advice
you.
of counsel.
So I'd still like to make a public comment, and as a member of the
On
public.
advice of counsel on, you've been asked not to, and because you want to does not make it so. We respectfully ask that following Council Member Normandy's recommendation, you email it and it'll appear in the record.
How will it appear in the record?
Exactly the way you.
It's not going to get into the transcript, and that's why I want to, it's not going to get into the video, which is the transparency factor here. The public isn't going to be aware of it because it's not going to be in the meeting video published on YouTube. It's not going to be in the court reporter's transcript. So what's happening here is you're actually stifling a member of the public's opportunity to make public comment. I drove here a distance because I wanted to make a public comment, and I'm being denied that. And I would like my right as a member of the public to make my 3-minute public comment.
Commissioner Brennan, so I'm gonna defer to Steve Madison, and then we can get clarification from our city clerk to ensure that your email statement is on the record.
We can include the statement verbatim in the record. And so if you can email it to us, we will include it. And it will be in there with all comments. So any member of the public who wishes to look at the minutes, who wishes to look at the documents associated with this meeting, will be able to see your comments.
Is it going to be in the court reporter's transcript? I don't see how it could be, because only what's happening at the meeting should be in the transcript.
The transcript is of the narrative. I would advise our representatives, I have no objection to it being in the transcript. We can include it and incorporate it as an attachment so it becomes part of the record and be reflected in the minutes that the commission that the subcommittee would consider at their next meeting.
Okay.
I don't have, I don't know if it will be or not. I would just like to make my comment. That's all I'm
Well, we've
asking,
just
is
represented
I'd like to
you
make my
that
comment.
That it will be absent objection from the liaison committee, but it will be included. And so,
Is the committee committing to make sure that my comment provided via email, regardless of the length of it, is going to be in the
As
transcript?
noted by our city attorney, it will be in there verbatim.
Well, the thing that you want to submit, not something new after this meeting. What you have today that you want to comment on, I'm not willing to accept something that you go off after this meeting and write, and it's going to be a 5-page document. So whatever you have today that's within the 3-minute constraint, I would be happy to include that in the transcript, but not a thesis on something else later where we have to waste hundreds of pages of paper. So if you would like to.
So it sounds like I'm being denied. I'm being denied.
So I would like to comment through the chair. I'm willing to accept whatever the public comment that that Commissioner Brennan has currently. If she's ready to submit it today, she's ready to read it, so why can't she just submit it to this committee and have it put into the transcript?
Are you able to do that, Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Okay.
I would like
Well,
to
then-
give
then
my
I'm
comment
denying.
verbally.
Yes, Mayor Normandy. I
Councilman
have,
Iango.
I've watched this game for 20-plus years. And I think a more clever and resourceful commissioner might have found an underling to read your comments. They'd be so important into the record. But apparently it has to be your voice. I'm tired of the gamesmanship, and I'm excusing myself from the meeting.
Had I,
So,
And I'm going to excuse
from
myself too, because
that-
this is a
thank
bunch
you.
of games. And it's actually, quite frankly, for the record, one person is not more important than 750,000 other people in this county. So, if the commissioner wants to be selfish and play games, you're doing a disservice to the rest of the county, not just to this committee.
all I'm asking to do is make a
So,
3-minute public
Chair-
comment.
Through the chair, I'm going to be excusing myself.
Thank you, Chair
too.
Crowley.
Thank you.
President Titch, thank you.
thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mike
if I
Rochelle.
could ask, we had hoped for a positive endorsement of this draft
Me too.
from the committee. Absent that, I don't think we can recommend that there is one, or represent that there is one, unless something changes. But
I think when we go to our respective bodies, there will be a staff recommendation absent a recommendation from the committee.
Okay. Moving forward.
Great. Thank you to both parties and council. I'm going to adjourn this meeting.